Hi, my name is Courtney Todd, and I'm going to be talking about the Capnocytophaga canimorsus bacteria. And below is just a picture of the bacteria itself, the little red rods. The Capnocytophaga species is actually, they're gram negative, meaning they don't retain crystal violet when forming a gram stain. And the bacilli means they're rod shaped. They're slow growing. They're facultative anaerobes, meaning they grow in the presence or absence of oxygen. They're part of the normal flora of the oropharyngeal tracts, which make up your mouth and your throat, and in humans and animals. They are opportunistic pathogens, meaning they can cause disease and can be harmful if given the appropriate environment, but they're part of our normal microflora, which means they're part of what make us up and usually aren't dangerous. They're capnophiles, meaning they thrive in the presence of carbon dioxide. And when they talk about the Capnocytophaga species, they usually talk about it in two categories. The human category, which includes the C. gingivalis, which is a picture of that bacteria right here, the C. granulosa, the C. hemolytica, the C. leadbetteri, the C. ocherea, which this is a picture of right here, and that's under an electron scanning microscope, and the C. sputnica, or sputigina, I'm totally butchering that, but it is this bacteria right here. And the two that they found in domesticated animals, such as cats and dogs, is the C. cynodegmi and the C. canimorsus, which is the one that this is about. I did want to include some of the Capnocytophaga cynodegmi just because it is closely related, but it's rarely seen in pathogens and diseases or anything. But there was a case of a man in India, in a 59-year-old man that was bit by a stray dog, and he developed cellulitis, bacteremia, which is what most people call blood poisoning, and pneumonitis, which is an inflammation of the lungs. Most of the C. cynodegmi and the C. canimorsus are from infected or bites from dogs that are infected with the bacteria. The word kynodegmus derived from the word kyno, the Greek word kyno, which is dog, and degmos, which is bite. And this bacteria species is found in 86% of dogs and 84% of cats. And that was done in a study in Japan. Just some quick facts about Capnocytophaga canimorsus. It was first discovered in 1976, and its original name before they actually named it Capnocytophaga canimorsus was, which is a mouthful, is discogonic fermenter 2, which is DF. Basically, it's for short, it's DF2. And they weren't able to name it canimorsus until it was actually identified as a bacterial species. And the C. canimorsus is actually detected in about 74% of dogs and 57% of cats. And that was also from that 2010 study in Japan. But according to the World Health Organization, approximately 4.5 million Americans, this is just in the US, they didn't have a global statistic, are bitten by a dog yearly. And out of those, 885,000 seek medical treatment. About 30,000 of those have to have reconstructive surgeries. 3 to 18% develop infections, and there's about 10 to 20 fatalities that occur every year. Cat bites account for, which this is a huge percentage, but it's from the World Health Organization as well, but it's 2 to 50% of injuries worldwide are accounted for by cat bites. And there's 400,000 cat bites per year in the US and 66,000 hospital visits per year. This bacteria is in cats, but it's mostly in dogs is where they typically find it. Just a little bit of nomenclature, how they name the bacteria. The capno just means for carbon dioxide, since it's a carbon dioxide living species. The cytophaga is the genus of bacteria, and to even shorten that up, the cyto means cell, and the phago means eating. And the reason that they're phagocytes is because they actually they go into a they hide outside a white blood cell and will avoid like being taken up by macrophages. So it's kind of an invasive bacteria, and that's why it can be pathogenic. And the canis is dog, and morsus means bite, and those are both Greek or Latin as well. So both of them kind of, they just are two different languages, mean dog bite for short. And transmission, the susceptible individuals, the routes of transmission are the biological vectors, which is just like a pathogen is transmitted from a bite from a host, which would be the dog or cat. But even direct contact includes like licking or even a scratch from a nail that, you know, a cat or dog might have had in its mouth. It could be from a multitude of things. The people that are the most at risk are the immunocompromised population. Those who've had a splenectomy are those have been diagnosed with cancer, cirrhosis of the liver, or HIV, because a lot of things that I looked into, people, alcoholics were at high risk for because it causes damage to the liver. And also your spleen, which both of those are important in your immune system. Just some signs and symptoms of a Capnocytophaga canimorsus infection. I guess this could be for the other one as well. You have blisters around the bite wound, redness, swelling around the infection site, pain at the infection site, fever, diarrhea, stomach pain, vomiting, headache, confusion, muscle joints pain. But most commonly is what's reported when I've seen all the cases, they reported flu-like symptoms. And a lot of times they didn't even think that it could possibly be this bacteria. Some diseases caused by the canimorsus are cellulitis, which, you know, is just a skin infection that can be really dangerous. Gangrene, which, you know, you can lose arms, legs, pretty much anything that because it makes your tissue necrotic. Meningitis, which is the inflammation, which this picture right here is showing where the swelling of the brain occurs in a meningitis, and endocarditis, which is your heart. And just below, here's a picture of cellulitis. This is kind of describes the septicemia and like basically septic shock for short. Gangrene because the toes are black, and then the meningitis picture. The prevention of the Capnocytophaga canimorsus infection, the best prevention is to avoid dog bites altogether, but even direct contact with the cat or dog, especially with an open wound, but not necessarily, it could be with, you know, just on your skin as well. But I think that having an open wound makes you more susceptible, just any break in the skin. Just sterilized medical equipment that any of your pets could come into contact with, like such as a CPAP machine or something that they can put in their mouth, and just keep them away from pets. If bitten, just wash the area thoroughly with hot water and soap. And I would, you know, take antibiotics and contact your primary care physician if you're concerned. And if any dog bite breaks the skin, I don't care how immunocompromised, it's probably best to just go to your doctor or urgent care and get some antibiotics, just because to avoid anything that could possibly happen. And the treatment is, they'll usually at the first signs of like exhibiting symptoms, they'll give you just a broad spectrum antibiotics like your beta-lactams, such as penicillin, or, you know, the other, just any other one that could targets both gram-positive or gram-negative bacteria. And then if they think it is a gram-negative dog, that's when they have to do more specific bacteria, which are antibiotics and the extended spectrum cephalosporin, because actually first generation cephalosporin does not work because it doesn't inhibit cell wall synthesis for this kind of bacteria, since it's gram-negative. They chemically alter the cephalosporin in a way that makes it target beta-lactams, which beta-lactamase, because a lot of the beta-lactams, there are a lot of the Capnocytophaga canimorsus infections they've noticed in the 80s started becoming resistant to beta-lactam medication, which is what you would normally like amoxicillin or penicillin. Some milder infections that they'll treat with clindamycin or doxycycline. And here's just a picture of different classes of antibiotics and their like what they target, their mode of action. You know, you can look over this on your own time and just kind of see. And this is actually a friend of mine, Kathy Roberts. She was infected with the Capnocytophaga canimorsus bacteria when she came into contact with one of our dogs in rescue, because she does rescue with me. And she was 60 at her time of infection. There was she was giving the dog treats, and he nipped her finger, and so there was a slight nip on like 2 fingers, and so it scratched the skin surface. One day after contact, she felt that her fingers were sore, but she felt okay, and so she even told me she had a lot of things going on personally, and so like her stress was at an all-time high, so she wasn't really thinking. It was kind of in the back of her mind, but it like wasn't a concern. And then on October 20th, 2017, she was admitted to the ER when she woke up and her right leg wasn't working, and she was severely dehydrated and feverish and sick, and so they actually transported her to Oklahoma City, and her blood pressure was extremely low, and she was experiencing tachycardia. She altogether spent 50 days in the hospital and even in the burn unit because her blistering of her skin was so bad, and 9 days in rehab because she had to have both of her legs amputated and both of fingers on both of her hands amputated. So this really affected her, and she was kind enough to share her story with me and send some pictures. And here are some pictures of her, like her legs from when she actually was in the hospital, and just a picture of her in the hospital. And as you can see, she's experienced gangrene, her tissue's necrotic, her feet are black. And that's why they ultimately, for her to actually be able to get around, they had to just completely remove from the knees down her legs. And then she also had her fingers removed, which is here. And they made her some prosthetics, which she also sent me a picture of. And I also included the story, and I'll put it on the Google Docs. This is a news story they did about Kathy. So I thought if you wanted to look into it a little bit further and hear her story, like, and see what happened, like, you can look at that. It's just too long to play for my presentation. And another fun thing I thought that would be really cool. I remember I don't watch Dr. Oz. I don't, it's more about sensationalism, but there was an episode of the Capnocytophaga bacteria on Dr. Oz. And so I actually found that episode and included that as well. So I'll also include that on the Google Doc link for you to look at. And it's entirely too long to play right now too. And I'd just like to give a special thanks to Kathy for sharing her story, being open and honest with me, because, she didn't have to do that because, everything is protected by HIPAA. And she just said she wanted, if it prevents this from happening to someone else, she wanted to let people know and inform people. So she was really excited that I was doing it on the whole bacteria. And here are my references. And that's it. And I'll include those links on the docs. So if you have any questions, you can ask me in class or email me, which I will also include. So thank you guys for listening, and bye.